Welcome to education in our community, and Oakland is. Oakland is emphasizes education in many of its shows, and we're privileged tonight to have an educator who wrote a book about her life as a Black Studies educator. Her name is Dr. Cecelia Louise Hatshepsut Arrington. Dr. Arrington, we have your book, and I think you wrote the book in 2002. Could you tell us why you wrote the book?
Yes, Dr. Cannon. First of all, the book was published in 2002, but I had contemplated writing my autobiography for about 20 years before I actually had it published. And I wrote it because, first of all, it was a way to resurrect my mother and father from the grave. My mother especially had sacrificed so much to educate her 4 children. And every year until I wrote this book, I would cry. And then when I wrote this book, I said, now the world will know about Stella Arrington. The world will know about Dred Arrington. And also, Dr. Cannon, so many outstanding educators leave these shores of North America without leaving a legacy for their students. I have taught hundreds of students, and once I'm gone, my students will at least have my autobiography to refer to. It is dedicated to them as well as my mother and father. So I feel so good. Even if I don't get this second or third book published, I feel so good that I have gone on to resurrect my mother and father from the grave.
Well, I noticed that you were going to tell us a little bit about your mother and your father and some of the things that, I think your mother's name was Stella?
Yes, Stella Louise Arrington.
Louise.
Yes.
Part of your name.
Yes.
And
yes.
then tell us about your father as well.
Yeah, my father, Dred Scott Arrington.
After the famous Dred Scott decision?
Yes,
yes.
Yes. My mother was a teacher, believe it or not. She was a principal in a 2-teacher school. And very few people know about those schools in the South. But she taught along with a co-worker, and she taught 3 classes. The teacher who assisted her also taught 3 classes. And she would leave this school at about 3:30 and start her insurance route for Atlanta Life Insurance Company and come home about 6:30, I guess by between 5:30 and 6. But believe it or not, before she started this route, my mother would leave Green Oak School, that was the name of the school, come home and prepare our dinner, and then go on her route about 4:30, come back about 6:30. This lady, I know she was tired, but my mama would also, on the corner of her bed, assist us with our English problems at Jones High School, our math problems, our history concerns. She was just, to me, a phenomenal woman.
And your high school was called Jones High School?
Yes, Jones High School.
Tell us about there and how you stayed there.
Okay. I was able to stay at Jones High because I had that same perseverance that was a part of my enigma, that was a part of my mother's stick-to-itiveness. Because you see, the principal of Jones High School, I refer to him in my book as Mr. Riley, but his name was Mr. Rouser. He did not care for families unless they were a moneyed class. We, the Arrington family, we had perseverance, but we didn't have any money. But I stayed at Jones High School because I studied hard. And I was determined that I was going to let my studying pay off for me. And then my mother was there telling me, Cecelia, you will finish Jones High School. Just do your best in your classes. Do your best in your history class, in your English class, in your physics class. And then one thing about Mr. Rouser also, he favored not only the moneyed classes of people who were in our hometown, but he also favored the students who catered to him. And I wasn't taught to cater to anyone, but I made it at Jones High.
He was the principal?
Yes, he was the principal. I didn't care that much for him because I think he stayed as the principal of Jones High School because he catered to the white power structure downtown. And in a Jim Crow environment, these are the kind of men they love to put in positions. So that's how I stayed there, perseverance. And going on what Cecelia Arrington and Dred Arrington taught me.
Yes. Did you want to say something about your father?
Yes, my father was a person who was very warm-hearted. My father disciplined his 4 children. Even in terms of going to church, it tickled me a lot. Daddy would not go to church on Sundays, but Mama wanted us to go to church, and therefore he made us get out of the bed on Sundays and get ready for church. My daddy was a butcher. He was a very excellent butcher. Could cut a chicken up in, I think, a minute and a half. And he worked downtown. I knew he was good, and I have this in my book, because he went to work each morning at 3 a.m. And the white man for whom he worked picked him up. And, you know, in a Jim Crow environment, you got to work the best way you could. Mr. Ray came and picked Daddy up.
I wonder why.
And they stopped at a local cafe, got their breakfast, and then went on to work. And then Daddy went on to work.
Did you ever find out or figure out why he picked him up, even though that wasn't typical?
It wasn't typical. I think he picked him up because Dred Arrington was his supreme meat cutter. And people came there to get their meat between 7, 8, and 9 o'clock, and they wanted to be sure their meat was ready. And Dred was their supreme meat cutter.
Now, I see you went to Alabama State College, and you taught in Drew, Mississippi.
Yes.
And then you taught at Castlemont High School in Oakland, California, and the Black Panther Party was instrumental in bringing you to Merritt College, and you focused on Black studies. Would you tell us about some of those experiences from the different institutions?
Yeah. In Drew, Mississippi, that was a very precarious existence for me. I taught youngsters who were 3 and 4 years older than me, because at that time I was only 20 years old. This was a sharecropping environment, and it was so sad. 61 was the first year those young people had gone to school 9 months out of the year. It was 6 months for some. And whenever the whites who owned the land where they were supposed to be sharecropping wanted the boys, they came and got them and took them to pick the cotton and took them to chop the cotton. And the black principal couldn't do one thing about it.
And the parents couldn't do anything?
Couldn't do anything because they were living on Mr. Estes' land. They were living in his house. And as you know, sharecropping was slavery all over again for our people. Mm-hmm. And then I came to Castlemont High School. Castlemont High School, my last 3 years there were very outstanding, because after I taught my regular American history classes, I taught Black history after school. And on some occasions, members of the Black Panther Party would come and hear me talk about the glory and the beauty of Africa, and Lincoln and what he did and did not do for black people, all that. They liked it. They liked what I was saying. And they went back and they told the president of Merit, we want Arrington to come to Merit College and teach Black history.
Was that on Grove Street at that time?
Yes, it was on Grove Street.
Which is now Martin Luther King Jr. Way.
Yes. And it was very interesting. I was so happy about it. And once I signed the contract, I was still happy. But that Monday, when I began to go to Merit College, I said, oh my Lord, where am I going? I'm going to the school of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. I must be a fool. I know that I'm not going to be able to teach in that environment where the Black Panther Party is so outstanding. But once I got in that classroom and saw those students around there so willing to learn, wanting to learn. Some came in their house shoes. My first class, there were about 70 students. All of my apprehension just died away. And I said, I am going to teach these students. And I went home every night and prepared. I went to every convention in the summertime. I talked with men like Dr. John Hope Franklin, Dr. Benjamin Quarles, and they helped me construct my syllabi for my classes. The interest was so intense on the part of the students. They wanted to know. They had received a European education all of their lives. They wanted to know Black history, and I wanted to teach them. And every night I went home, I studied more and more to give them this outstanding experience. Because at that time also, if you weren't a good teacher, somebody in the Panther Party would come and get you and put you out of the classroom. And I didn't want that to happen to me.
So your work with the Panthers and your enthusiasm and I'd say the vitality that you had in your teaching, that was maintained for a number of years, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
How many years did you work at Merit?
First of all, I worked at Merit College 33 years.
All right. I think we're having a signal that we almost need to end our segment. How can people get your book?
They can get my book by just phoning me.
Okay. Is there a number?
Yes. They can phone me at 510-562-0540.
Dr. Arrington, we want people to get the book because your experiences are just so many and multifaceted. It will take time, much more time than we have for this segment.
And I thank you because you, Dr. Cannon, you've always been there for me. You have promoted me as well as Mr. Guy and Mr. Michael Lange, and I appreciate you. And yes, I'll have to come back and
Thank
discuss
you
it
so
some more.
much for your work, and it speaks volumes.
Oh yes, it's been a wonderful experience.
And we'll come right back. We'll be back very shortly with our follow-up segment.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly.